Sydney, April 2015. Huang Xiangmo is playing the tables at the Star Casino. He won $100,000 and delivered to the Australian Labor parties. He was moving in VIP circles with top politicians. Made political donations nearly $3 million. Clive, an expert on influence operations, says he was giving money to gain power. Senator Sam Dastyari, a rising star in Australia's Labor Party, was befriended by Huang. With Huang beside him, he backed China's claims to control in the South China Sea against his party's policy. The senator had to resign when it was revealed he'd accepted thousands of dollars worth of expenses, paid by Huang, whose visa was revoked on national security grounds. The United Front Work Department. 70 years ago, in the battle against nationalist forces, Mao Zedong, the Communist Party leader, called on the Chinese people to unite against the enemy. Sheng was a Communist Party official in the 1960s, saying that United Front work has become central to President Xi Jinping's ambitions. Also increased his budget to nearly $3 billion, to extend its influence across the globe. Xi has 60 million who live in other countries to carry out his orders. Australia has a large Chinese community of 5% of the population. Senator James Patterson represents many Chinese in Melbourne. From this point, a lot of them have been wonderful people who live in other countries to carry out his orders. Australia has a large Chinese community of 5% of the population. Senator James Patterson represents many Chinese in Melbourne. From this point, a lot of them have been wonderful people who of Queensland. Over half the international students here are from China. 2 years ago, an Australian student, Drew Pavlov, decided to organize a protest against human rights abuses in China. This because he saw people being brutalized in the streets of Hong Kong. 1 million Uyghur Muslims interned in concentration camps in China. One of the United Front's tasks is to make sure the Communist Party's version of events in China is the only one that's heard outside the country. Dissenting voices, no matter how small, must be challenged. A man in the black sweatshirt snatched the megaphone out of his hands, smashed it on the ground in pieces. After 200 to 300 Chinese start singing the Chinese national anthem, to counterattack what he was saying. According to Clive, these students are part of United Front agencies. The Chinese consulate in Brisbane is closely connected with the university. The Consul General, Xu Zhai, is an honorary professor there. James believes it's inappropriate for a diplomat for an authoritarian foreign to be appointed to an honorary position regime at an Australian university. The Consul General condemned Drew's protest and praised what he called the self-motivated patriotic behavior of those who broke it up. Drew received death and rape threats against his family after the attack. The university spent $300,000 taking disciplinary action against Drew. Banned him for 2 years. Parliament began an inquiry and called the university's top official. However, the Chancellor said they are consistent on how they handle it. James learnt that the university's ingratiation with the Chinese Communist Party, that they allowed undergraduate courses at the university to be directly funded by the Chinese government, plus that their vice-chancellor was paid a bonus on top of his salary. Drew's ban was reduced to 6 months. University says it has no links with China. Australia brought in a law against foreign influence aimed at China. Australia's intelligence agency homed in on a house in Sydney and Chinese researchers in the state government. The researcher worked for a Labor MP, Shaket, who'd become increasingly pro-Beijing. Clive says that the Chinese Communist Party was the superior party. Federal police allege that a chat group of Chinese, led by his researcher, influenced Mo Zelmain Jiang and failed to disclose they were acting for the Chinese. Mo Zelmain denies any wrongdoing. But the Jiang operation is still going. China is building a military, equipped with the latest weaponry. President Xi's pledged they will be a leading nation within 30 years. He's head-to-head with America in the quest for cutting-edge technology and talent. 8 out of 10 industrial spying cases in the US now involve China. Attorney John leading the legal battle at the department, stopping to conduct traditional espionage, to steal economic property, intellectual property, and to involve itself in USA politics. Mark arrived at the Chinese consulate on July 22 last year. Just hours before, the U.S. government had taken the unprecedented step of ordering the closure of the Houston consulate. The U.S. government said the consulate was a den of spies and a center for United Front activities. The Chinese says this was a lie. John says they were on the list of keeping an eye on the building activities was a center for recruiting into its talents programmed. The chance to earn hundreds of thousands of dollars for bringing know-how and technology back home. Clive says this is a method more advanced in their country. Chinese American was accused of stealing trade secrets from a company in the city, says Greg. Trelleborg developed a high-tech industrial phone, based on a secret formula. Chan was charged with economic espionage and is now in prison. He admitted to doing it. Chinese businessman was only rumbled when he tried to sell the specialist technology back to American firms. So they replicate to make my country better. Replace that company on the global market, giving them the chance to dominate. The Chinese government says technology borders. It hasn't been robbed or stolen. China has been accused of targeting top U.S. academics to get ahead. Charles, chair of the chemistry department at Harvard, accused of lying about his connection to the Chinese government. He got $50,000 a month, $100,000 in expenses, and $1 million for a research lab for a Chinese university. Harvard Stewart has worked alongside him for 2 decades. Stewart says scientists are in danger because everything they do is built on collaboration. Penn, an American citizen. FBI footage caught Peng's secret footage exposed him as a Chinese courier because he was a USA citizen. Peng taped envelopes of $20,000 cash from Chinese intelligence under the television. He thought it was a pay from Chinese, but it was the FBI. Peng was sentenced to 4 years for doing it multiple times. Operation Fox Hunt. This businessman does want to be identified. His whole family in China was to reveal his whereabouts because he refused to work with China. China says it cooperates with other countries in accordance with international law. Operation Fox Hunt targets are overseas criminal suspects. President Xi has issued a stark warning that he will not allow any county to dominate them, says Clive. Whether political or strategical. 6 years ago, President Xi was warmly welcomed to Britain. The government is keen to win lucrative Chinese contracts and investment in the UK. Britain's infrastructure has become increasingly bound to China. 134 billion of Chinese money is reportedly financing from London to Liverpool, Manchester to Middlesbrough. Behind every commercial deal there lies the Communist Party. Conservative MP Tom is amongst dozens of parliamentarians from all parties pushing for a hawkish stance on China. This is because they are tied into the economy and political system of Beijing. Huawei maintains it is not linked to the Chinese Communist Party but believed to be done in 29 Confucius institutes in higher education. Many linked the embassy. This is done by deception. Radomir says most of the top 24 universities in the 33 UK have some form of research or sponsorship relationship with the Chinese military. The National University of Defense Technology is a people liberation army. Made breakthroughs in military technology. Dong Yangshu spent 5 years in the physics department. He organized workshops to bring other National University defense students here. He went back to the military university there. A few months later his name appeared on patents filed for military university research. Now, universities like Oxford have to be careful of how they bring in people. Hong Kong, New Year's Day, 2020. Mass protest against China tightening control. This has been a wake-up call for Britain. Ted Hui, a pro-democracy leader, a member of Hong Kong's parliament, was on the front line. A police officer targeted him and sprayed pepper right into his eye on purpose while trying to take off the goggles. This is because their freedom of speech and being able to say whatever they want is going backwards. United was behind the campaign. When HSBC, a bank, signed, it was seen as humiliating. HSBC stopped TED accounts because of Hong Kong police told. Finn's activism has come at a price to free Hong Kong. He was walking in a London suburb, 3 people rushed him. He thought it might be the end of his life. However, he managed to get home and took this video on his phone.